You can check out pricing guides online. You can ask other writers what they're doing. You can check out what other writers are doing on their websites, but you never really know what your fees should be until you've gone through the process yourself. So I've been trying to work on a rubric or a guiding calculator that can help you see which components of really high value writing you have already mastered that would let you move up the pricing ladder and show you what areas in your business you could focus on if you want to move up a little faster. So I started to break it down in my mind. What are those components that move somebody up from entry level $20 to $50 an hour writer into those really hard to believe rates with $300 to $500 an hour and more? There are definitely copywriters at the top of their game who are billing astonishing amounts of money for what they do. And it really does, it fits into this rubric. So I wanted to walk through it just really quickly because it also explains why your writing talents is not the only thing that you're billing by. There's so much more. There's 3 other columns that go into writing and billing that even if you are just the most rock star writer in the world, you have mastered your craft, you're like Merlin and words just do whatever you want them to do. If you're not providing a good project process, if you haven't niched in anything, if you can't guarantee any kind of outcomes, you're not going to be able to bill very much because nobody really cares about that part. But if you have just basic writing chops and you develop these fantastic processes, you get really deeply niched in something, and then you demonstrate proof because you're repeating that process a bunch, you can move up into these much higher rates, even if you only ever stay at basic or decent writer. So just to break out what I take into consideration when I give pricing advice, first is writing skill. So everyone here, we have those basic chops. You have the basic skills of a writer. Maybe you've received compliments before, or you just feel amazing when you write. You just know that there's something there for you when it comes to writing. At the next level of writing skill, you really reach that wordsmith area where you're getting the hang of writing. You've channeled your inner master several times, it comes pretty regularly whenever you're working for clients. But this is your thing, but there's still a little room to grow. And then when you've truly mastered that, when you reach that advanced level, words bend to your will, how to write on behalf of a brand or a person or these formats, and you can do it really masterfully just about every time. The next thing that you're looking at is processes, project management, and client experience. And this, when I added it, it was just like the mind explosion, because when we first come into freelancing, we're really down here with fly by the seat of your pants planning. So you're willing to give it your best shot, but you're more or less making it up as you go. You're not super sure what's happening. You're just really happy to be there and you're going to help. That's a wonderful place to be, but you want to be moving up the scale of pretty darn good processes where you're guiding your client in the right direction, even if sometimes you're a little unsure about who's in control of that process. So if you're leading the client or reverse, until ultimately you're delivering this seamless, reliable experience. You have operations and processes. You walk clients through so they have a controlled experience of whatever they're going through. That's just like perfection up there. The next section is your niche and your marketing knowledge. And this really does play a role. I think people tend to think of this as optional, which is true. You could stay right down here. So you could opt out of niching. That's fair game if you want to be a generalist forever. But you can see this is going to keep you limited in the beginner rates. And this will just hold you back when you leverage or average everything in here. So maybe ultimately what we're going to be able to see is I have proof, but I'm a generalist, but I have a great experience and I'm just an okay writer. You can see how those rates even out. Maybe you're going to be slightly more than intermediate, that kind of stuff. But if you come through and you're like, boom, this is where a lot of the really high earners are, you can see why they're so confident charging those rates, because they know when you work with me, I've nailed my craft. I have a great process for you. I've worked in this niche a whole bunch and I have proof that what I do really helps people. And that's where your confidence comes from so that you don't have imposter syndrome. Whereas if you're down here, you have all of these things, but then you're like, let me charge $500 an hour. You probably won't feel good about that until you've delivered that proof. So it's not that you can't do that. It's just the alignment of wanting to do that or being able to do that changes a little bit. So with niching, we start out, we're fairly general. It doesn't really matter who or what you're writing about. You can just do it all. Your background doesn't really factor into it very much. Fair game. We all start here. As you move up, you become more aware of core concepts. you understand how marketing works and how it's applied to a specific niche or industry, you get just a little bit of that background knowledge and you've read a couple reports on what's happening. And then ultimately you become really deeply niched, either special experience or research or background knowledge about a really in-demand type of marketing. So maybe that's white papers, or an area of expertise. So maybe that's fintech. And I wouldn't say becoming deeply niched, that in itself doesn't inherently make you more worth it. It's just that you know where to apply your knowledge. It's like a chiropractor, exactly where to push to actually fix it instead of hurting someone. And I think that's what's happening with niching. And then finally, this one's the tricky one because honestly, I think I've avoided this my entire career. So you can definitely opt out of a lot of these, but the outcome guarantee and the risk when someone goes to hire you. When we first start, we have few or no examples. We have all these signs of potential, but we haven't demonstrated that yet. So we all start low on this side. Once you have a positive track record, some examples of outcomes, some samples of your work, you start to move up and you have that track record. And then you get to people who have demonstrated proof. And it's just really hard to do, but there are people who do it, like especially in the conversion rate optimization space, direct response space, people will be able to have very specific statistics around how their content performs. And so they get to shoot to the top over here. And so what comes in, it almost turns into bingo again. Also, gym shares, I assume I fall somewhere between the beginner and intermediate levels, despite years of journalism experience. Right now, I lack specific B2B sample I can point to as proof of expertise. Yeah, that's a great example. So somebody comes in here, you have decades of being a true craftsman in this field. So it's like you already have some real value here. So I think you jump out of the beginner rates. You have editorial experience, the processes and the editing and the layers of stuff that happens. We don't have a real niche yet, and we don't have real examples here. So I think you are absolutely correct in thinking like a high beginner, mid to low intermediate rate until we just get a couple samples and we get a couple spaces that you really want to focus on. And then you can really quickly start to command a higher rate. I feel pretty darn good about the numbers here. So beginner rates, about 20 to 50 an hour, intermediate, about 75 to 150 an hour, and advanced 300 to 500 an hour or more. There's definitely a scenario where your internal billing can be more than that. That's why rubrics are fantastic, because we all are starting at different places, but you can plug in your own information and kind of see where you might land with this. How can you know if you're good in a subjective field? And that is so interesting because one of the first people who gave me feedback on this said, I think I score in gray for all of that, but my income doesn't align with that. Like I've had a really strong year running a writing business. And I think that's where imposter syndrome comes to play, because people can look at their skills and still think that they're below average or normal or not give themselves credit for stuff, when in reality, this person has a PhD, they're really good. They've been doing this for a year. They have great processes. They're very deeply niched and they have proof from their clients. So it's take the rubric and maybe go look for proof in what you're doing to see where you fall. Because if you think you're just a decent writer, but you have great feedback, you might be lying to yourself about that. Or if you feel like you don't have any processes, but you check your Google Drive and realize that you have templates from the last 5 courses you've enrolled in, and you just haven't organized them and made them your own, like you might shoot to the top up here once you organize that stuff into the process. If you want to charge a premium for your writing work, you have to work with people who really value the writing that you do. And that comes down to how you find your freelance writing clients. I would love to share my 3 secret tips for finding excellent clients in B2B marketing. Just check out this video next.